Hello everyone, I'm John Cartwright, and this week on GVG we're counting down to the Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, which is mere days away, with a fully featured Zelda video every single day. We've already done one on my look back at Breath of the Wild, but we've got a ton more in the making, some really big ones. But before we get to the big stuff, let's simmer down, let's lie back, chill, stop jumping around, I'm ordering you, chill. I want to show my Zelda collection, because this is in the background of pretty much every GVG video I do. And I don't think I've really shown it, because I've done like a lot of Sonic videos, some Mario videos, but Zelda is my favorite franchise of all time, and without it, I wouldn't be here talking about video games today. I think I've told this story a few times, but I had a friend who had a GameCube, whereas I grew up with the Dreamcast and PS2, and I played some good games, but I also played a bunch of just licensed stuff. But when he had games like Melee and Wind Waker, I was just very jealous in the back of my mind, thinking, oh, why can't I have games like that? Obviously PS2 has some great games, but I was so jealous watching Wind Waker in particular, and his dad would play the Ocarina of Time bonus disc, and I was jealous of him too, because he would never let me play though, I'd just kind of sit there and watch him play, and be like, oh god, I wish that were me. But down the line, the Wii was coming up, and Twilight Princess was the big launch title. And I was going to set aside my PS2 ways, not look up the PS3 or 360, I wanted a Wii, to have my Zelda fix, my Zelda experience. But I couldn't wait! I went to a second-hand game store, and this was before the retro boom, so things were very, very cheap. I think I got an N64, a console, with a copy of Ocarina of Time for like £10–15, and I just played that through in a weekend. The anticipation of this video game was so grand to me. I played it through in a weekend, and I got it. I was like, oh, this, it lived up to the expectations I set it to. Even though Wind Waker was kind of the big boy GameCube game that I was kind of jealous of, Ocarina of Time did it for me. It made every other game I'd played before that look minuscule, and it made me reassess the PS2. I'd go back and play games like Shadow of the Colossus and Ape Escape and Metal Gear, just because I saw new greatness in video games from playing Ocarina of Time. And from there, the Wii Virtual Console was this portal to libraries that I had no access to. I'd play Zelda 1, Zelda 2, A Link to the Past, and so many more through the Wii Virtual Console. Not just Zelda, Mario and Metroid and everything. So even though I wasn't alive when Zelda 1 came out, I feel like I really did get to experience a lot of what people who did grow up with it would have through that. In fact, with Twilight Princess, even though it was the big shiny new Wii game that I got for Christmas, when I went onto the Virtual Console and downloaded Zelda 1, I kind of paused my Twilight Princess playthrough midway through and just played the entirety of Zelda 1, because there's something about that game that is instantaneously fun. Yes, it's cryptic, yes, the combat may show its age in areas, but just being able to explore the world, forge your own path, find the dungeons, and not be on this guided tour is visceral. And I adored Zelda 1. But anyway, let's talk about the collection. We'll go chronologically with their release, starting with Zelda 1. Now this here is an NTSC copy. When I was around 16 years old, I would go on to collect the games that I played through Virtual Console, and that would expand to games that I also didn't play through Virtual Console, but it started with stuff like Zelda 1. I'm pretty sure this was the first Virtual Console collectible I got. And this, I'm holding it very gently because, dun dun dun, my cartridge has a bit of a chip here, where the ROM doesn't quite stick in, so it comes out. And so when I play it on an actual NES, I swap it with the Metroid cartridge, because they have very similar grips in there. So whenever I play Zelda 1, it's through a Metroid-looking cartridge. And if you've never seen the inside of an NES case before, this is all unused. This is Famicom size. So Famicom cartridges were around this big, and I think they just sort of used the empty space to look more big boy-y, like a VHS tape, which is funny. There's some more Zelda 1 stuff though. Of course, there's the GBA version of Zelda 1. Basically the same game. I've also got it on like Virtual Console for Wii and Wii U and 3DS and Switch NSO. But I also kind of consider this a Zelda game. The Mysterious Murasame Castle for the Famicom Disk System. This, I'd consider a sister game to Zelda. The UI is very similar. If you look at the top of the screen, you'll recognize Zelda elements. I did a video on Nintendo Life about this game. I think it is a brilliant system-defining game for the NES, and it is a crime that the only localization, or only release we've had in the West, was on 3DS Virtual Console. It's not an NSO, that's a crime, it's a really good game! After that though, we got Zelda 2, The Adventure of Link. Now, this is one of the most recent Zelda games that I've finished. I've played and finished every game in the series, but this one eluded me. The first time I played it was through Zelda Collector's Edition for the GameCube. I got it again on Virtual Console for the Wii, and I played it so many times over the years, but I don't think I ever got further than like the 5th dungeon? I don't know why. I know why, it's very hard, but it wasn't until the Switch NSO with Rewind that I finally finished this game. And you can call it cheating, I don't care. That's how I played and finished Zelda 2, with Rewind. But I found a new appreciation for it though, even though I may have been cheating. I used to see this as like the black sheep of the series. I wouldn't think it was a bad game, but I'd think like, it's not one that I'd go back and play very often. However, I do like it now. And if they re-released it, or remade it, or did a follow-up to it, I would be cheering. There was also a GBA version of this. This one's a bit worse for wear. There's a bit of, you can see there's a bit chipped in the middle, but it works. It's all good. Now, after that, so I was on a spree of Zelda games on the Wii. I had Ocarina of Time on N64, had Twilight Princess on the Wii, Zelda 1, Zelda 2. My fix was starting. And on message boards, in that era, it was always, what's the best Zelda game? Ocarina of Time or A Link to the Past? I think we've kind of moved past that just being the discussion now. But I never really knew much about A Link to the Past. I knew that it was highly regarded, but I'd never really seen gameplay of it, so my first exposure was hands-on gameplay through the Virtual Console. And much like Ocarina, I finished this in a weekend. It really did so much for me. When it comes to discussions about which is better, Ocarina or A Link to the Past, I don't have an answer. I think they both do different things very well. They aren't that similar. They both have different purposes. But all I'll say is I think they're both brilliant games. And Link to the Past's influence can still be felt today in thousands of games. Now, I'm not going to say this with every game, but there was a GBA version, Link to the Past. This one gave Link Ocarina of Time young Link soundbites. So whenever he uses his sword, he goes, "Yeah!" which is neat. And also there's 4 swords in here too. Not adventures, this is a different 4 swords. And in fact, I never actually played this until the anniversary version on DSiWare. I mean, I tried to play it, but just getting friends to hook up with you is tough. That came out wrong. Getting friends to play with you is tough. So on DSiWare you can play alone. It's also just easier to play with wirelessly rather than with the link cables. But yeah, neat version of Link to the Past. In fact, I've got a little story. It's not a big one. I went on a holiday trip with some friends to a beach house, and I took this with me and just finished it on the train journey there. That was kind of neat. They were just all huddled over watching me play it on my Game Boy Micro. That was cool. Now, after experiencing the Virtual Console, I noticed some Zelda games aren't here, like the Game Boy line. Now, this is Link's Awakening, the second cartridge-based Zelda I owned. So I had Ocarina of Time already, and I'm actually lying to you though, because it wasn't this one that I owned. It was this one, DX. I skipped over the original entirely. I didn't get this until like 6 years ago? Sometime recently. But DX was my first time playing Link's Awakening. And much like A Link to the Past, I didn't know anything about this going in. I'd heard it's a bit different, but I knew nothing about it. And so I was pretty established with Hyrule. I'd seen Wind Waker, but I hadn't played it at this point. So my expectations for Zelda were little green guy, explores a forest, sometimes there's a horse. But this time, this was a very personal world, much smaller. No, there's no Zelda, there's no elements you'd come to expect from Zelda. And so, I'm sure most people playing Link's Awakening these days kind of know what they're in for going in, but I had no idea. and so it hit very hard experiencing Link's Awakening for the very first time. And I kind of consider this a sister game, much like Mysterious Murasame Castle, The Frog for Whom the Bell Tolls. Some will argue against whether this is a sister game or not, but they share so many similarities. Those side-scrolling sections from Link's Awakening, they're in here. It is a bird's-eye view like Zelda most of the time, but you go like in a dungeon or in certain labyrinths, and it will go to side-scrolling. There's also very similar UI elements, and again, I did a video on this at Nintendo Life. I think it's one of the best Game Boy games in general. So whether you consider it as a sister game to Link's Awakening or not, doesn't matter. Brilliant game, worth your time, there's a great fan translation out there. Now, after Link's Awakening comes my first Zelda experience, which was The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, and N64. I don't love a lot of Power N64 games. This is kind of the era that suffers most from slowdown. Because N64 games are already very low frame rate, and when you bring them down to 50 Hz, you get like 17 frames per second consistently experiences. So it's kind of hard to go back to this copy, but I had such fond memories playing this as a kid. But nowadays, I tend to play the American version on NSO, or whatever I can. But Ocarina of Time, while the PAL version may show its age, I think the base game is still brilliant. And if I were to play a copy of Ocarina of Time, would it be the N64 version, or would it be the 3DS version? There's two different covers here. If you pre-ordered it, you'd get this one, which is the American box art. But otherwise, you'd just get this one, the European box art, which I adore. I love this vibrant landscape. Much more than... I know this is iconic, but I love this landscape. So would I play the 3DS version or the N64 version? It depends. I think I like the sort of darker tone, the N64 one. I know the original artwork was more vibrant, so that's probably what they were going for with this one. And the frame rate's more playable, the touchscreen's great for just having more items out and taking the iron boots off and on real quick. Definitely this is the more friendly version, but I still see a lot of value in this one. Also, they made the Master Quest, which was on the GameCube copy of Ocarina of Time. They made it flipped like Twilight Princess, making it like a bit more value in there. So that's cool. Then after that was Majora's Mask. I played this for the first time through Zelda Collector's Edition on the GameCube, and I had a pretty bad experience because it would crash a lot. That was a very unstable version of that game. So I went to get the physical version, much like I did with Ocarina of Time on the N64. So I played this on real hardware. And what a special game. This, much like Link's Awakening, kind of changed the dynamics of Zelda. Like, it has dungeons, it has traditional Zelda elements in there. But if you just played Majora's Mask from start to finish, just focusing on the core quest, I think you miss out on so much of this game. Because it's all the surrounding elements that make it. It is doing all the quests, learning everybody's lives, the character study, and just working with that time limit. And when they made it on 3DS, I think they made it more friendly to being a traditional Zelda game. Like, if you were to just do the dungeons, they made it so the time limit is less of a hindrance, which is good for that playstyle, but it does make the core of Majora's Mask, in my opinion at least, lesser. And I don't own boxes for any cartridge Zeldas apart from Majora's Mask. And this is one of the few N64 games that didn't have that ugly PAL border on the box and just gave you a nice big frame. So that's cool. Now, let's move to the next generation. So this was Wind Waker, the game that pretty much started it all. I saw my friend playing this and I thought, I need a piece of that. And have you ever watched clips of a movie on YouTube without seeing the movie? Like just little funny bits. And aha, that's neat. But you never really get the context or the full picture. And then you see the movie, it's like, oh, it's that scene, I know that one. And you get a more appreciation for the movie. That was this with Wind Waker. So I'd seen the intro, I'd seen Link saving his sister, I'd seen the ending. I'd seen just little parts of my friend playing the game, but I'd never seen the entire thing. And so when I actually got to get my hands on it and really take the lead, which he would never hand me the controller. So with this, I could finally touch the controller. And sailing made more sense. I remember we would sit back and watch him just sail. Like, he'll put down the controller, I'd eye it up, be like, is this my time to grab it? But no, he would just put it down while he sailed to get to the next island. It didn't look fun. But when you're in control of the destination, there's suddenly a lot more to it. And I believe the NTSC versions had the Master Quest as a pre-order bonus, whereas they pretty much came with every PAL copy. It's tricky to find a PAL copy without it. So we've got the Master Quest and Ocarina of Time right there, which is cool. But yeah, this was pretty much what got me started on Zelda. That's what made me eye up the entire series. After that, though, there were a few different Zelda games that I would get. Collector's Edition. This is what got me to play Zelda 2 and Majora's Mask for the first time. And also, they had just some cool bonuses, like trailers, a demo for Wind Waker, and a cool retrospective showing all the games. I got my mind going, like, oh, look at these games I could be playing. I think this is just a very cool release. Not something Nintendo does very often, but very neat. And then Four Swords Adventures. I played this through on my own in single player. I think it's a pretty good single player game. But the same beach holiday I talked about with the GBA version of A Link to the Past, I'd bring my GameCube as well. And my friends and I would play 4-player Four Swords Adventures for around a quarter of the game. We never finished it though. And it wasn't until Good Vibes Arcade with Brandon Miracle, Daniel Albert, and Zion Grassel that we'd finish it. We played on Dolphin with NetPlay, but it was very cool to finally play this the way it was meant to be played from start to finish. And very kindly, Pixel Pa sent this. He sent me this a few years ago. This is the Japanese version of Four Swords Adventures. And it's something that I think is kind of essential for Zelda fans, because it comes with this. Navi Trackers, sometimes gets called Tetra Trackers. It is an exclusive mode with voice acting. So on the TV screen, Tetra from Wind Waker is speaking Japanese, and she's telling you, like, there's pirates on the GBA that you've got to go and talk to on your screens before your opposing players, and she basically calls them out and it's a race to get to them. But there's Wind Waker visuals in cutscenes for the green, red, purple, and blue links. It's a very unique mode. And if you've not seen a Japanese GameCube box, they all slip on like this. Neat. And then we've also got the Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. I did have this one boxed. I remember buying it on eBay for like £10. This was a different era before YouTubers like me ruined the secondhand market. But Minish Cap, what a beautiful game. I think this may have been the last missing link before I was caught up with the series. So after playing Minish Cap, I was pretty much there with every other Zelda fan at that point. And it's still one of the most beautiful pixel art games I've ever seen. It blends the worlds of Link to the Past and Ocarina of Time very well. You've got like Ocarina of Time characters, but Link to the Past gameplay. You can roll. You've got Eslo the Hat. Brilliant game. And God, speaking about things that I've overlooked, we did a video on these recently where I kind of said don't overlook these games. I've done it again. The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Ages, The Legend of Zelda Oracle of Seasons. These often get confused as like Pokemon-like games where they're meant to be, you know, the same game with different elements. That's not what they are. Not at all. These are two completely separate 2D Zelda games. Separate overworlds, separate stories, separate dungeons. There's nothing alike in these apart from just sharing assets. You know, that's it. It's the same Link sprite. There's some similar enemies. Everything else completely different. The core gimmick is different. This one is about changing the time. They're going from the past to the modern era. This one's about changing seasons, going from winter to summer to spring. They are very, very different games. And if you've only played one of them, you have missed out on another Zelda. Play them. They're very, very good. So, thus far, we've been talking about games that I've come back to through Virtual Console or buying systems that were before my time. But this is kind of where I caught up with Zelda and started playing everything that released from pretty much day one from here on. Starting with Twilight Princess. I got the Wii version to begin with, also got the GameCube version down the line. This is the NTSC version though, because it's a lot more expensive in PAL. I think I got this maybe like 8 years ago or so, and it was like maybe £50 or so cheaper just to get the American version. I don't know why the PAL version was so much more then. But yeah, I got the Wii version, and to me this kind of mirrored flipped perspective is hard to grow out of. When I came towards playing the Wii U version down the line, which we'll talk about later, I kind of had to go for Master Mode, just because, Master Mode? Is that what it's called? That's not what it's called, the Hero Quest, I think they called it. I mostly went for that just because I was more used to that perspective. I love the pointer controls. I think the waggles may be a bit too much, but pointing with the bow and arrow felt so great from day one. And I know the opinion on this game has shifted a bunch over the years. I've always liked Twilight Princess. I remember when I first started playing, it was Christmas Day, and I couldn't understand how to do that fishing part at the beginning. Because you're meant to fish twice to sort of get the cat's attention. And that wasn't clicking with me. I fished once, I was like, that didn't work, what do I do now? And I remember being up until like 2 in the morning. My TV in my room, like a small CRT, was emitting a glow in the corridor. My mum came down and she saw that I was playing a game, and she was like, Jonathan, darling, why aren't you in bed? I was explaining to her, Mum, I've had none of Christmas Day to play Zelda. Tomorrow we're seeing family, I have no time then. I just want to play Zelda. And she's like, she kind of understood though. And she's like, okay, well, 10 more minutes in bed. And you know what? I got that damn cat to take the fish in that time. Great game. I love Twilight Princess a lot. Definitely iterative of Ocarina of Time, doesn't really push things forward, but it's such a grand world. And love Midna. Love Midna a lot. So now that I was caught up with the series, not only would I not miss one, but I would be early to one. This was the first game I ever imported in my life. The Legend of Zelda, Phantom Hourglass. Not only did I import it, but I do not own the copy that belongs to my region, because I went to America on a holiday with my family and picked up the American version of Phantom Hourglass. So I have every version apart from the PAL version. I remember playing in Japanese and being very stuck, because this game relies on reading a lot. Sometimes you'll just read something, take a note of it, and repeat what's been read to you on something. Like, it'll say like, oh, there's this tree over here, you've got to dig it up. And if you can't read, you don't know what that means. But I still managed to make it pretty far into I might have even beaten it with the help of guides online. But over the years, I think Phantom Hourglass is a good game. I love the touch controls. I know that's usually the complaint about this game. I like the touch controls. I think it's more the dungeon design I don't love. So if I were to make a list of Zelda games, this would probably be pretty far down there. But still, I must have liked it enough to buy it twice. And what came after that? Of course. Link's crossbow training. I unfortunately don't have the box this came in anymore, but I'm sure this was the reason most of us bought a Wii Zapper in the first place. I like this game a lot. I think it's just so fun to reuse the world of Twilight Princess for a rail shooter. The Wii was a great rail shooter machine from, Darkside Chronicles and House of the Dead and Dead Space Extraction. There were so many great rail shooter games, and this was another one of them. Good game! After that, and I love the power box for this one, The Legend of Zelda Spirit Tracks. I've got a couple little figurines for this one. I forget how I got them. They're missing arms, some of them though. Spirit Tracks, I think, is one of the most upgraded sequels of all time. Because it shares the foundation of Phantom Hourglass. Very similar controls, very similar assets, very similar layouts. But somehow it manages to pull it off in a far more engaging way. Dungeons are better, the items are better, the overworld is better, everything about this is better. The relationship between Link and Zelda is the best in the series. It's so charming. And even the premise feels important. Like, Phantom Hourglass was just kind of like a dream. Whereas this is still the newest game in the timeline. This takes place after Wind Waker in the new Hyrule. It's a very, very cool game, and I always give it the highest recommendation I can, but legitimately, I love this game. After that though, Skyward Sword, of course, got the bundle with the gold Wii remote. You could not do that. Skyward Sword, the origin of the franchise, I feel like it doesn't quite meet those hefty advertisement goals, because the origin of the Master Sword is that it was another sword in the first place. Do we get an origin about that sword? Not really. I still quite enjoyed the game though. It got criticized a lot at launch for being very linear. I think after we've had a more open game of Breath of the Wild, it's easier to appreciate its linearity a bit more. And there's some brilliant dungeons. Some of the best in the series, in fact. Skyward Sword, I think, is a good game. Good game. I'm gonna go a bit out of chronological order here, but here is Hyrule Warriors. Now, there's two versions that released in this generation, being the first Hyrule Warriors on Wii U, and then Hyrule Warriors Legends on 3DS. And when Pixelpar gave me that Four Swords Adventures in Japanese, he also gave me a demo copy that wasn't for resale, that was meant to be used in stores, which is just kind of cool to have. But I actually love Legends. I know this one gets criticized a lot, but if you're playing on a new 3DS, the frame rate is very stable, and I found that this was a great portable game. I played through it to completion on Wii U. I thought it was a great game. I loved the original designs for Link and Zelda. I loved the story. I love a lot about it. But being able to just play missions whenever I wanted on 3DS was something that was far more my style. And all the new content too. There's like a whole Wind Waker section and all these new characters that weren't in the Wii U game. And in fact, even after Age of Calamity, I kinda prefer the original Hyrule Warriors. I think Age of Calamity and other Musos of that kin kind of they're more interesting as a premise, right? Because they take the source material and do more loyal stuff with it. But just something about taking a bunch of Zelda characters and throwing them in these very fan servicey areas, it just has more longevity to it. It just feels more. Even if the premise is less interesting, the execution is more interesting. So Hyrule Warriors 1, I think, is still my favorite Muso by quite a substantial amount. Now, let's talk about the other Wii U Zeldas. Because that was kind of the Wii U Zelda game, Hyrule Warriors. It got Breath of the Wild, but do we count that as Wii U Zelda? I don't really. Wind Waker HD, though. This did a lot. This is a limited edition one, but unfortunately I don't have the box anymore. I've still got Ganon, though. He came in like a little dome. I've lost his dome. This was kind of the Wii U's big game of that year. It was a slim pickings for a lot of big Wii U games, but this overhauled Wind Waker with new lighting, with gamepad functionality, made sailing faster. I never did everything in the GameCube version, but I did in the Wii U version. I got all the hearts. I got every bit of map for the Great Sea. I did every side quest. I did everything. And I really found a new appreciation. Like, I already liked Wind Waker on GameCube, but I think I started to love it on Wii U. And I'd love for this and this, to come to Switch. Because Twilight Princess HD, I don't love this box. Let's look at, one second. Look, we've got this box here, and this box here. They did too much. But I'm not going to criticize the box too much. This is also limited edition. It came with the Wolf Link amiibo, which could be used in Breath of the Wild. And I liked a lot of what this did. It did, in fact, it did a lot that Wind Waker HD didn't. It sped up the swimming animation, sped up the climbing animation. It just did a bunch of quality of life things that don't always get the respect that they deserve. But it didn't have anything as big as overhauling the whole lighting system. It looks how you remember Twilight Princess looking, even if the textures are pretty wildly overhauled. But yeah, that was kind of the Wii U Zelda, Hyrule Warriors and 2 GameCube remasters. 3DS, on the other hand, was a different story. Now, Eiji Aonuma was kind of talking about, at this point, reimagining Zelda. And I think because Zelda hadn't changed the standards of gaming for a while. And it's kind of known for that. Like, Zelda 1 made the adventure genre as we know it. A Link to the Past refined that to a shimmering gleam. Ocarina of Time put it into 3D and just kind of made what every 3D game was from there on. But then, like, Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, while great games, didn't change gaming. And I think they kind of wanted that to happen again. And so when they were building Breath of the Wild, they also talked a bit about, non-linearity, doing things the way you want. And we sort of saw that with A Link Between Worlds. Going into this, I was excited, but I also didn't quite know how they'd pull off reusing the Link to the Past world. Would it feel too similar? But those fears were unfounded. Oh, by the way, I love the reversible cover. So I've reversed it here. This is the reversible one. But the original one has this sort of golden print, which I don't love. I love it like this. I love the colours. I'll put that back in later. But A Link Between Worlds, it stands as one of my favourite games in the entire series. It's just so joyous to play. Yes, it does feel familiar to Link to the Past and there's a lot to it, but the new dungeons are so clever. The shifting mechanic is great. It's just one of the best games on the 3DS, easily. And for the next game, Triforce Heroes! I've got a bone to pick with everybody. Do you know how many Zelda lists I've seen that have put this at the bottom? It's a good game, but I don't know why it's so hated. I think if you're playing it on your own and you have to sort of juggle around soulless links, then yeah, that's boring. But if you can get friends to play with you, this is a brilliant game. It reuses the basis of A Link Between Worlds, which is already excellent. There's brilliant 3-player puzzles. There's online play, which no other multiplayer Zelda had at that point. It was just a really good game. Like, I don't think it's one of the best in the series or anything, but it's far from the worst. No way. Although I guess to be the worst in a series of nothing but bangers is still a pretty big compliment. But still, I think this is a good game, and plus Link can wear a dress, which is always a good thing. Now, there were other games released around this time before the Switch era. There was also Four Swords Anniversary on DSiWare, which was free, and then delisted. That was done by Grezzo, who did the 3DS remakes of Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. And that was cool. That was basically just the GBA game, but with you can play with on your own, which was cool. The GBA game didn't let you do that. But you could also play wirelessly without needing to have a GBA adapter. Not online, but just wirelessly locally, which was neat. And then there was also Twilight Princess Picross, which was a My Nintendo reward for 3DS, not Wii U, the game that had Twilight Princess HD. Yeah, that was kind of the gaps of digital Zelda games. I am missing other Zelda games that I have, that I'll talk about later, that released before all the Switch stuff. But I kind of count that as a separate tier, so we'll talk about that stuff in a moment. But yes, the Nintendo Switch era of Zelda. We're going to need a Wii U game back. 1 second. So, this was The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. One of the most important games of all time. I was talking about just now about Zelda not really reinventing gaming again. This did it. This was what they wanted. I got this on Switch at launch. I didn't get the Wii U version until quite a bit later. But if you've not played the Wii U version, there's a splash screen you've probably not seen before. Neat. This is signed by Patricia Summerset. I've always had a big interest in voice actors, a big respect for them. And given that she was the first mainline voice, I know there's other Zelda voices, the first mainline Zelda voice, I've met her a few times, and I asked her to sign my copy. Thanks, Patricia. So this one's missing the age rating. A lot of European games, if they get collector's editions, they often don't have the age rating on them. So I got the limited edition with the Master Sword that came in there too. One of my favorite limited editions. A lot of collector's editions just give you stuff you don't want. I'm not getting the Tears of the Kingdom ones. I think it's just kind of too expensive for nothing. But this one gave you a really cool statue, and I love that. But yeah, what can you say about Breath of the Wild that hasn't been said already? What a brilliant game, and yeah, what can you say? Let's talk about the other Switch Zelda games. Switch has quite a few of them. Like that was Breath of the Wild. Let's get them all together, actually. So Switch had this many, more than any other platform. So we've done Breath of the Wild. There was also Age of Calamity, the follow-up. Talked about this a bit already when I was talking about Hyrule Warriors. I think I would have liked this more if it wasn't scared of being something more. Like, I think it sacrificed its power in the name of giving you more playable characters. I think this could have been a really cool, sad game, like an inevitable ending, but instead it just kind of went in a way I didn't love. But the game itself was fine. Then, Cadence of Hyrule. Love this game. Bought it digitally at launch, a physical version released later down the line. This doesn't get talked about enough. This is such a beautiful game. Some of the best pixel art I've seen in a while. It's a spin-off of Crypt of the Necrodancer, so if you've played that game, you kind of know what to expect. But they've merged it beautifully with Zelda gameplay. There's dungeons to explore, there's items to get, and there's just some absolutely stunning music. Play Cadence. And then also just, this is kind of just more of what we talked about already, but then we have these three games. These are all sort of re-releases. Hyrule Warriors Definitive Edition gave you the 3DS content with the Wii U visuals, and made it look prettier, made the frame rate better. Just kind of, it says what it is, the Definitive Edition. I love this in a portable form factor, and in fact, this is one of the few Nintendo games this generation that released first in Japan. And because it came with Breath of the Wild outfits, I was like, oh boy, I've got to get this before it comes to English-speaking languages. So I bought it digitally on the eShop when it came to Japan. And it wasn't until recently that I actually got myself an English copy. So if you've noticed that this has been missing on my backdrop in a few videos, that would be wise, because I've been hanging on to a digital Japanese copy. But it felt weird to have every Zelda game physically apart from that one, so I kind of had to finally take the plunge. Then these two. Skyward Sword HD, I thought was good. It made it 60 FPS, it fixed up the pacing a bit. It's a good game, made me appreciate Skyward Sword a bit more. Nothing more to say really about that one. And then Link's Awakening. Got the collector's edition for this one as well. This I thought was stunning. The visuals were amazing, the audio was even better. And it took away the limitations of the Game Boy, so the screen didn't have to sort of scroll every time that you moved to a different square. And the most important part was how it changed how items work. So you didn't have to, only have 2 things being held at once, and that's including your sword and shield, having to constantly juggle that around. That fixed this. I do think there's mild elements that do get lost, mild parts of Game Boy charm that are lost, but for the most part, it's a brilliant game. And then we're just sort of waiting for Tears of the Kingdom. That's most Zelda games. Stuff I didn't show, though. We've got the Zelda Game & Watch. Now, I haven't got any batteries in this right now. I might show this off in a future video just to highlight it, because I know it's not a very common item. But this is something that I've wanted for a very long time. And it wasn't until a Christmas or 2 ago that my partner got it for me, who I'm very thankful to. But yeah, I don't actually have any legacy Game & Watches apart from this. I've got the Super Mario Brothers and the new Zelda Game & Watch, which has Zelda 1, Zelda 2, and Link's Awakening on it. But yeah, this is my only actual legacy Game & Watch. I'd love more, but if I'm to have any Game & Watch, of course it's going to be Zelda. Alright, we're getting towards the end, but I can't not talk about this saga of DS games. So the only one that was localized in Europe, not America for some reason, was Tingle's Rosy Rupee Land. This is an RPG starring Tingle. It is wild, it is wacky, it's weirdly sexual sometimes. Tingle's a middle-aged man who wants a love, and so he makes a deal to become Tingle, and it's just this brilliant sort of point-and-click feeling adventure game. I want to do a video on this in the future, but I think it's such a great game. But it's not alone. There were 2 other Tingle games that only got released in Japan. This is Tingle's Balloon Trip of Love. It's quite different to Rosy Rupee Land, and again, I want to highlight this in another video in the future. And this was a Club Nintendo game in Japan, Tingle's Balloon Fight, which is Balloon Fight with Tingle, as you'd expect. And there's also the Too Much Tingle Pack on DSiWare, which I also have on a Japanese DS. I guess that's lost media now, huh? That has stuff like a calculator and camera filters. It's what DSi had a few things like that. Not greatly important, but it is a Zelda game. You can't forget it. Can't forget it. And when it comes to my Zelda merch, I'm not much of a merch guy. If I have income that is set aside for games, it's going to go towards games rather than figures and all the likes. But I do have most Zelda amiibo. I think the only ones I'm really missing are the Archer Link from Breath of the Wild and Zelda from Breath of the Wild. My Guardian is boxed up. It's my only boxed amiibo. I don't know why I've not opened it. I guess I'm just scared. I'm just scared to let him out of his cage. I don't want him free. Not freeing him. Never. You can't make me. I've got a few Zelda manga. When in my teenage years, I had an anime phase. I still watch anime every now and then, but I had like a big anime phase. And I was reading quite a few manga too. And when I found out there was Zelda manga, I was like, oh, baby! So I started reading The Ocarina of Time Part 1 and Part 2, which is like Part 1 is child, Part 2 is adult. And I've got a few other ones, like Phantom Hourglass, and The Four Swords, and Minish Cap. But I have gaps. I haven't read any of the Twilight Princess ones, and there's like, 11 of them? I've got a lot of catching up to do with that. There's also a few Zelda soundtracks. Most of them come from collector's editions, like the Skyward Sword one, which has Symphony of the Goddess. And there's also like the Breath of the Wild soundtrack. I think A Link Between Worlds was a Club Nintendo reward. And there's also this DS case, which is a Club Nintendo reward, giving you a bunch of spots for your DS cartridges in one convenient case. Now, how about the books? So we've got Hyrule Historia, Arts and Artifacts, the Encyclopedia, and Creating a Champion. All very important books. Hyrule Historia came out around the time of Skyward Sword, and it revealed the Zelda timeline, causing much dismay, much pleasure, and just feelings all around. This disregarding the timeline stuff, which I actually quite like, I thought this was just a great book in general. I love, in all of these ones, I love the side notes showing behind-the-scenes elements of designs in all these games. The Encyclopedia has this page of Minish Caps showing like these little illustrations of Link and Ezlo. Some really cool stuff in there. Art and Artifacts, also gorgeous book. But my favourite is Creating a Champion, because it does something so... we never see this with Nintendo games. We never like peek behind the curtain. It's got so many design documents that weren't used in that game. Guardian designs, it's got the Minish, it's got all of these things that you would not expect to see from Nintendo. Pure as day in there. I don't know if they're going to resurface in Tears of the Kingdom. Who knows, really, but it's so cool seeing all these unused elements in that book. What more is there? I went to Symphony of the Goddess, the concert. I've got a shirt somewhere, but here's my pamphlet that I got from that as well. I've got a Hyrulean shield and the Master Sword that they were given to me by friends over various Christmases and birthdays. This one was from Aaron Cooper, the shield, and I believe the sword was from Jamie Hornbrook. This is a real blade. One of my friends accidentally cut themselves holding it. You know, if I wanted to, I could take on anyone with this thing. But yeah, that's mostly my Zelda collection. I might be forgetting a thing or two in there, but I do own every game in the series. I played through and completed all of them as well, and it's just kind of been a big part of my life. I wasn't alive when Zelda began, and even in my early childhood years, it wasn't really on my radar. But the minute it was, I just skyrocketed to play everything I could in this franchise. I've played the Satellaview games as well, the ROMs that have been made online. I played it all! I don't own the CDI games. I have played them, but I don't own them. That's kind of a crown jewel. If I can ever find them for a good price, I'll jump at that. Absolutely. But yeah, that's my Zelda stuff. I'd also love to have the Famicom Disk System versions of Zelda 1 and Zelda 2. I've played them through an NSO, and it's super cool seeing the slight differences between the two, especially audio-wise. I'd love to own that too. But yeah, I've got to wrap this up at some point. That is John's Zelda collection. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for sticking with me. And let me know, what prized Zelda possessions do you have? Thanks for watching, everybody, and enjoy the rest of GVG Zelda Week. See you later. Bye.